Belle Star. She was born in slaveholding Missouri and allied herself with ex-Confederates like Cole Younger, leading a network of horse theft in Indian Territory where she exacted tolls at gunpoint. She organized dances to recruit thieves, kept meticulous records of stolen cattle brands, and paid bribes to sheriffs. She served 6 months in 1883, returned to crime and died in an ambush in 1889, Colt .45 in her holster. Calamity Jane. Martha Jane Canary served as a civilian scout for Crook's column, carrying orders across Lakota Territory under crossfire for years. In the Black Hills, she guided supply wagons, dueled over horses, and maintained a reputation as an unbeatable drinker. In Deadwood, she combined daring and violence. She carried 2 Colts to settle debts, yet also tended to smallpox victims without charging a fee. Annie Oakley. Phoebe Ann Moses won shooting tournaments at 15 years old. In Buffalo Bill's Wild West, she split playing cards in half, extinguished candles, and shattered bullets in flight at 27 M. In 1898, she proposed to President McKinley a regiment of 100 women sharpshooters, convinced that female discipline would reduce casualties. She toured Europe challenging royal guards. No public duel was lost, establishing a standard of lethal sporting precision. Pearl Hart. Pressured by debts, Pearl robbed the Globe Florence stagecoach in 1899 dressed as a man. She used a .38 revolver, took $431, and returned part to the victims, becoming a national news story. In the Tucson jail, she sawed through the bars with a saw hidden in a pie and escaped, but was recaptured. Sentenced to 5 years, she was pardoned after 2. It was the last stagecoach robbery carried out by a woman in the country. Laura Bullion. Daughter of a Texas rancher, Laura joined the Wild Bunch as a forger. She bought dynamite, fabricated identities, and sewed stolen bills into her skirts. On the Great Northern Train in 1901, she helped blow open the safe with gelignite and walked away with $65,000. Arrested in St. Louis with marked money, she served 6 years, was released without betraying her accomplices, and lived anonymously until 1961. She carried a bulldog revolver in her corset. Rose Dunn. Raised among Chickasaw cowboys, Rose had handled a Winchester since she was a girl. During the 1893 siege of Ingalls, she crossed a bullet-raked street to deliver cartridge belts to her boyfriend George Newcomb, then opened covering fire and allowed the Doolin gang to escape. The press dubbed her Rose of Cimarron. Never prosecuted, she married and laid down her guns. A marshal's report highlighted her uncommon courage. Eta Place. Companion of the Sundance Kid, Eta covered the rear in Wild Bunch robberies and cataloged the loot. She fled to Chile in 1901. Carabineros recorded an American woman firing on a patrol in the Andes. The Pinkertons circulated a studio photograph, but after 1907 she vanished from the records. Her true identity and final fate remain obscure, cementing the myth of the Phantom Gunwoman. Big Nose Kate. Born in Budapest, Mary Horany arrived in Arizona as a prostitute, opened a boarding house, and adopted the nickname Big Nose Kate. In 1879, she set fire to a pantry to free Doc Holliday, then hid weapons that were to be used in the tension preceding the OK Corral shootout. She carried a derringer in her corset to deal with collectors. She died in 1940, the last direct link to the Tombstone gunfighters. Kitty Leroy. A French-American dancer, Kitty opened the Mint Saloon in Deadwood and carried pairs of pistols in her skirt. She killed her third husband in a public duel over poker cheating, ran a brothel, and required patrons to leave their weapons on the bar. Her fifth husband killed her in 1877 during a jealous quarrel, then killed himself afterward, an episode that sealed her reputation for violence in the gold camps. Poker Alice. British-born Alice Ivers mastered poker statistics, smoked cigars, and kept a Colt .38 at her side. She won about $250,000 at the tables in Lead and Dodge City, traveling between saloons armed, carrying a concealed knife and dressing elegantly. She bought a brothel in Sturgis. In 1913, she killed a soldier who tried to break in and was acquitted on grounds of self-defense. Her personal rule: she never played on Sundays. Cattle Kate Ellen Watson. As soon as she arrived in Wyoming, Ellen Cattle Kate Watson traded sowing for the lariat. She bought 60 acres on the cattle trail and began charging tolls, branding others' cattle when they wouldn't pay. She carried a Winchester and a Bowie knife against the Cattlemen's Association cowboys. In 1889, she resisted eviction, was captured by hired gunmen, and hanged without trial, an episode that ignited the fence war. Sally Skull. Sally Skull drove wagons of arms and cattle for the Confederate Army, always with 2 revolvers in her skirt and a saber at her saddle. She brokered deals in fast horses, killing anyone who tried to cheat her. Chroniclers cite 5 husbands, some of whom disappeared after quarrels. Her name became a warning: don't cross Sally if you want to come back alive. She said she preferred a revolver to a wedding ring. Stagecoach Mary Fields. Mary Fields, formerly enslaved, became Stagecoach Mary when in her 60s she took over a 500 kilometers mail route in Montana. She stood 1.85 m tall, carried a rifle and a Colt .38, facing wolves, snow, and bandits. She never missed a delivery or lost an arm wrestling match. In saloons, she smoked cigars and fired shots into the ceiling to quiet fights, maintaining the reputation of the most feared mail carrier in the territory well into old age, even amid storms. Lillian Smith. Annie Oakley's teenage rival, Lillian joined the Wild West show at 15 and taunted, "Annie's slow." She used a .22 Winchester carbine, lit matches in midair, and shot while riding backwards on horseback. In 1886, she set a record by hitting 64 eggs at 30 m in 60 seconds, even striking coins tossed into the air. The press called her the Demon of the Trigger, a reputation that led towns to ban her paid exhibitions. Belle Siddens, Madame Vestal. A former Confederate nurse, Belle became Madame Vestal in the saloons of Omaha and Deadwood. By day, she was a faro dealer. By night, she spied for Doc Middleton passing along stagecoach routes. She hid a derringer in her corset and is said to have killed 2 cheaters. Wounded in an 1877 gunfight, she disappeared without ever being captured, leaving a public reputation as a fierce, vigilant, and deadly lady. Elellanar Dumont, Madame Mustache. French by birth, Elellanar opened gaming houses in mining towns, requiring patrons to wear coats and bathe. She kept a Colt .41 on the green felt and expelled drunks with a butt stroke. She financed prospectors for a share of the gold. Bankrupt, she wandered armed through Nevada until she took her own life in 1879, after losing everything at one last poker table. Lottie Dino. Carlaua Tommpkins, the queen of the card table, roamed Texas saloons wearing silk gloves and hiding a derringer. She arrived with $3,000 and doubled the stakes by reading bluffs inherited from her gambler father. She forced gunfighter Jim Courtright to apologize at gunpoint. After marrying a croupier, she opened a hotel in New Mexico, keeping a drawer of revolvers for unruly guests. Kate Bender. Part of the family inn in Labette, Kansas, Kate positioned herself behind travelers during dinner, bludgeoned them with a hammer and slit their throats. The family buried the bodies in the garden and looted their purses. When 11 skeletons were discovered, the Benders fled. The Santa Fe Trail Death Angel was never captured, leaving a bloody legend in Kansas. Charlie Parkhurst, known as Charles, was a legendary stagecoach driver in California. He faced robbers, tamed Mustangs, and set gold delivery records. After his death, the morgue revealed that One-Eyed Charlie was actually Charlotte, who had lived in disguise to collect a man's wages. Among the belongings were a loaded Colt and an 8-thonged whip. She is credited with firing the fatal shot that killed the outlaw Sugarfoot in 1854. Josie Basset. Josie inherited a ranch on the Utah-Colorado border in the Uinta Mountains, a hideout of the Wild Bunch. Armed with a Spencer carbine, she defended cattle rustled from large companies. A lover of Elsie Lay and Kid Curry, one day she offered fresh bread to federal agents while the outlaws slipped out the back. In her old age, she arrested poachers with a rifle and distilled whiskey during Prohibition. Cattle Annie, Anna McDouit. At 13 years old, she ran away from the farm to sell illegal whiskey and Spencer rifles to Bill Doolin's gang. She rode across Indian Territory with her skirt tied to the saddle, cut telegraph wires, and warned outlaws of approaching patrols, Winchester in hand. Captured in 1895 after a 160-kilometers chase, she left prison at 18, and even in old age displayed her scars and escape stories, never once apologizing. Little Britches, Jenny Stevens. Partner of Cattle Annie, she rode stolen Mustangs with her hat tipped over a cocked Colt .45. At 15, she fooled jailers by swapping dresses, freed gunmen from the Pawnee Ranch, and covered their escape by firing shots into the air. She led the Choctaw horse robbery and the getaway after the Rock Island train. Arrested in 1896, she won her freedom and became a rodeo attraction, selling tales of her armed youth. Lozen, sister of Victorio. She was a Chiricahua Apache warrior trained in the Henry rifle and the Mescalero knife. She protected civilian retreats, guiding them through the desert by raising her hands and sensing the enemy. She rode bareback, launched flanking attacks, and fought in Geronimo's final escapes. Captured, she died of tuberculosis in a Florida prison. Among the Apaches, her name still symbolizes the sure arrow and unbending courage. Buffalo Calf Road Woman. A northern Cheyenne heroine who, at Rosebud Creek in 1876, crossed the line of fire to rescue her brother, turning the battle's morale. At Little Bighorn, tribal witnesses say she struck George Custer, knocking him from his horse. Surrendered after the war, she died of measles on the reservation. Cheyenne songs preserve the warrior whose boldness felled a general and inspired a nation. Running Eagle, Pamaka. A young Blackfeet woman who rejected domestic tasks, hunted buffalo, and stole crow horses. After a vision at the Sundance, she was accepted as a war leader. She painted her face blue, wielded a feather-tipped spear, and led warriors through icy canyons. She fell in an ambush at Badger II Medicine. Her spirit is invoked in ceremonies celebrating gender-defying daring. Sarah Great Western Bowman. Standing 6 feet tall with a Kentucky rifle, she cooked for soldiers, carried cartridges, and even fired cannons at Fort Brown during the Mexican War. Later, she led convoys to El Paso, opened inns along the Arizona route, and imposed order with pistol butts. Veterans said her battle cry drowned out the sound of shell fire. She died from a snakebite but received military funeral honors rare for a woman. Pearl Star. Daughter of Belle Star, she learned to side saddle with a rifle from childhood. After her mother's murder, she opened a brothel and gaming house in Fort Smith, offering shelter to gunmen for a cut of their loot. She kept a bribe ledger that warned her of raids. Acquitted of horse theft in 1902, she continued selling weapons and whiskey during Prohibition until she died of fever, her colt resting beneath her pillow.